So in this lesson, I'm not going to give you an actual Illustrator lesson because I'm just going to assume you know how to use Adobe Illustrator. But this is going to be the steps that I typically take. I'm sure there are other applications out there to vector. This is my process and how I do it, so please keep that in mind that if you're not an Adobe Illustrator user, then you might need to find another way to do this. So the first thing I do is I create a new document, and typically I just start with a 12 by 12 inch 300 dpi document. It's just something that I do out of habit for when I'm creating my SVG files that I sell on Etsy. So with a blank canvas here, what we need to do is actually bring in the file from Procreate. Now, I usually will export as a PSD and then just copy a layer over because I have multiple documents in one when I'm creating SVGs. But for this instance, what you might do in Procreate is go ahead and export your file as like a JPEG file or a PNG file. Those are the two that I would work with in here. So I would need to bring one of those files in. So let me just look really quick. All right, so here's a PNG. Most of my stuff are PSD files because, like I said, I have multiple things on a file at one time. But here's a PNG file. What you can do, I know you can do this in Mac, I'm not sure if you can do this in PC, but what I typically do is I can just drag it over so that it comes right into Adobe Illustrator. That would be one way to do it. The other thing you can do is come to File, Place. You want to go a little bit slower here. I export all mine to Dropbox. And let me find that particular file. Here it is right here. And then you can just, I hold down my Shift key and drag and then release. That way it fills proportionally into the area that I'm actually working in. So as you know, in Adobe Illustrator is a vector program. Procreate is a pixel-based program. So there's no way I can come in here and edit any of this or change any of this. If I wanted to make a color, it's not going to work, right? So we have to actually do an image trace in Adobe Illustrator to make it vector, or we could actually use our pen tool and trace over everything. But I'm going to show you how I do it, and that is with the image trace tool. Now, you may want to go ahead and bring up the image trace window by going under Window, Image Trace, and that's going to bring up this window here. Now, your window may look like this. It may say Default, Tracing Result, Black and White. What I have done is once I've got all my settings the way I like it, I have a saved file. So once I have it all saved, if I were to click on this icon here, I could save it as a preset and that way I could choose it every time I want to do it. So I'm going to show you my settings. And then I'm going to click on this advanced here to open up even more. So if you want to go ahead and screenshot my settings, everything I do is here. The one thing I make sure I do is ignore whites. That way I don't have to go in and delete the little centers of letters. I do it just like this. Everything here is how I do mine, how I try to get mine as close to perfect as possible. So once I've done all of that, I can go ahead and look up at the top up here and choose Expand, or I believe you might be able to do it from Object Expand as well. So once I hit Expand, that's going to go ahead and expand everything into a vector format. And you can tell because everything is blue. Now, I can't, unfortunately for myself, once I go in and to select, everything is still connected. I do need to go into Object and I need to ungroup it. I have to ungroup mine sometimes once, sometimes twice, just depending. But now you'll see if I choose the Direct Selection tool, you'll see all of the anchor points on the lettering. So that's the first step in getting it into vectoring. But let me just zoom in and I want to show you something. And this is the mistake I see a lot of people do when they sell SVG files on Etsy is they just sell it just like this. It's not a clean file, it doesn't look good, and it doesn't look professional. And if you were to sell this to a client, they'd probably be unhappy with the results. So if I were to zoom in, and you'll see because the image trace is not perfect, you're not going to get really clean files here. Look at this right here. Look at how this did not form a corner. So I am very meticulous and I go in and I clean up everything. So the first thing I do, and I'm just going to zoom in and out here, and the shortcuts I use to go back and forth between the current selection, the current tool that I'm using and the past one is my command key. So I can actually use it to go back and forth between the two and it saves me so much time. I use my space bar to zoom around my lettering. So the first thing I do is I smooth things. So if you come over into the toolbar and you choose where the shaper tool is and look for smooth tool. Now I can double click on that smooth tool and come in here and change the accuracy. I like to have mine bumped up to almost all smooth. What it does is it shifts the anchor points around. It may remove some, because a lot of times if lettering doesn't look very smooth, it's because there's too many anchor points that were created in the image trace process. And so the more anchor points you have, the more jagged things might look. So I'll use my smooth tool first to come around and fix things like this. And all you do, so I use my command key to go back and forth, right? I can use my command key to select and smooth. It's so much faster. And then I'll just take it and just sort of, slightly brush around and smooth that out. But I will come in and just smooth areas where there are kind of curves that need some smoothing. And it's not going to be perfect, but it gets me started because this is not perfect. This wouldn't be what I would want final right here, but I'll show you what I do to that once I'm done. This is, like I said, this is just the first step that I take. Just sort of smooth out some of the areas. I don't really want to take away from the character of it being handwritten, but I also don't want it to look sloppy like so much of what I see. And a lot of that looks sloppy too because people don't take the time to, make their files look the way they should be looking. They're in a hurry, they want to get it done. And I get it, I hate vectoring. It's not my favorite thing to do, but it's a necessary evil if you really want good quality work and you want people to respect what you do. And if you're going to be doing this as a professional and open an Etsy shop or sell as like somebody who does lettering projects for businesses, you're going to want to take the time and clean up your work. All right, I probably picked a really big file to do this on, so I may just do horrible and then, there's not that many, I guess. I could do them all. Oops. And so everything is on its own now, I can move things around. I could even recolor this if I wanted, but I come in here and I just clean everything up. And like I said, the other option would be that you could take the pen tool and go through and trace everything so it's all like clean and straight. But I feel like sometimes that's not the best option, unless I really need to just rework a letter, where I'm like, ugh, that did not come out nice at all. And a lot of it could be a combination of my lettering style and the image trace feature. But I just want to make sure all the weird kind of, lines have been smoothed out and look really good. I'm not going to do wet time. I think I'm just going to leave that off. Okay, so once I've smoothed everything, now my job is to go in and look at all the anchor points and make sure everything looks clean and crisp. So I get hello. Let me zoom out for a second. So I will come in and zoom pretty tight to look at everything. And using my direct selection tool, I can come in and sort of select on, and you'll see that when I've direct selected, I get the blues. The anchor points are filled with blue. The ones I haven't selected are usually clear. So I'll look at something like this and be like, okay, I need it to be in a straight corner, okay? So I'm going to look at it by deciding, do I need to remove an anchor point or do I need to move one? So I'm going to just remove it. So I'm just going to highlight the one right there. I'm going to go to Object, Path, Remove Anchor Point, and get rid of one of those because sometimes there's just too many anchor points and it makes everything not very clean. And then I might come in and select one and choose one of the pulls and just sort of, move it around until I'm happy with what it looks like. So this one I might do as well. So it still retains this like fun, unique, lettering character, but everything is just more clean. All of those little corners, I make sure all of my corners are clean. I might need to move this over a little bit and shift this just a hair. Here's one right here where I didn't get a corner when I vectored it. It got, like that. So I just need to select one of these, move it up, and I need to bring that little anchor point down. And I might need to just shift that over a little bit. This one just doesn't feel right like there. Like it needs to be over a little bit more, so I might do that. Here's another one. So you see what I'm doing? I'm just taking the time to make this look like professional. I even see it in fonts people do. They don't clean up their fonts. They just kind of go as is. So say this is here and I am looking at this. This is what you call a corner point, which is this anchor point is cornered here. I could make it a smooth one. If I were to click on that button, watch what happens to down here. If I click on that button while the anchor point is selected, it makes it a curved one. So I can curve it if I want to. I can get rid of this one. And I could make it just a little more smooth. So here's what I was telling you guys before. Once I smoothed this, I didn't really like the shape of it. So I want to bring this up a little bit more so that it's just still a little more narrow. And I'm going to come in and just shift this around. So sometimes I'm rebuilding the shape a tad if it's something that just didn't turn out the way I like it. And maybe then I might take and go ahead and just run that smooth tool around it there. Again, here's another one that just did not come out perfect. And I'm just cleaning these things up, guys. That's all I'm doing. And I promise you, it's a lot of work, but it's worth it. And you can charge more for your work because you care what you're doing. You know, I feel like I charge about $3.50 for my SVG files. They're not the cheapest on Etsy. Also, I don't manage licensing. That's up to 100 pieces. So, I just want my work to look good. I want people to know that when they got my file, everything was clean and pretty and looked really, really nice. So I might look, I'm just zooming around until everything is perfect. Okay, so let's just say that I was done, okay? Say that I did everything I need to do and everything is finished. That's when I save it. I'll save, if this is what I'm doing for SVG files, so if you're looking at doing that, I will typically go ahead and just save my Illustrator for myself. And then to save it as an SVG, so let's just do this. Let's do file save as. I'm just going to save test as Illustrator. So the next thing I do is I will do a file export as, and I will do it as a PNG file. So I make sure PNG is there, say export, high resolution, 300 DPI, type optimized, transparent, okay. I will also do a file export as, and I'll come down here and change this to a JPEG. And I do RGB, quality 10, baseline standard, high 300, and I will say go ahead, okay. And then I will go ahead and do a file save as, and you could save it as an EPS. Some people like the EPS files. This is what I started doing in 2018. I just leave everything. And then I do a file save as, and I come down and I choose the SVG, not compressed, just SVG, save. And my options are SVG 1.1, type SVG. I don't change any of this information. I say okay. And then I will sometimes come in now for the other file. I'll come in and select everything and I will reverse to just the outline. And I might change my stroke to a half a point. And then I will do file export as, and then I will change it to a AutoCAD interchange file DXF export, and I don't mess with anything here. Just leave what you see is what you get. 1 inches, all that. If you can screenshot that if you like, and I say okay, and that's going to give me the DXF file. And then I close it, and that's it. That's all I do, guys. That's all I do for my vectoring. I do that for everything I sell on Etsy for my SVG files. If you are selling to a client, you're creating a logo, you're going to want to give them a vector file. Don't give them a JPEG file. I mean, give them JPEGs for other purposes, but they need the vector file. You're not a true logo designer unless you're giving them final files in vector format. They're going to need those. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. If you have any questions, make sure you join our Facebook group. I'd love to have you over there. I'd love to talk to you guys over there. Ask me questions in that group. It'd be a lot easier than if you do it on YouTube because I do see those daily as opposed to what I see on YouTube. All right. I'll see you later.